Module 8. The Impact of Trauma. Module 8. Learning Objective. Explain how trauma impacts a child's healthy development. Module 8. Quote from Dr. Bruce Perry. It's literally the opposite of the way that most people think about this. Most people think young children don't really understand what is going on, and they're resilient. But the fact is, if anybody is impacted more severely, it's the younger child. Module 8. Experiencing trauma. When we experience trauma, this experience can have an impact on our core beliefs, our patterns of thought. Trauma can erode our core beliefs around safety, ourselves, and how we see the world and our place in it. Trauma can affect our thoughts and perceptions about ourselves, the world, and our beliefs about our future. Module 8. Views through trauma. Module 8. Supporting trauma. How can we support children, youth, and their families if they have experienced trauma? Infants, children, and youth can learn new ways of thinking, relating, and responding emotionally if we care and support them with a trauma-informed approach within a trauma-informed environment. A trauma-informed approach to caregiving is one where caregivers and care environments have an embedded understanding that children involved with children's services have experienced complex trauma that has impacted their brain development. We see this trauma in their behavior and their development, but through intentional caregiving and care environments, we can be proactive and intentional in providing opportunities for repair and healthy brain development. Module 8. Understanding trauma. Trauma history. We need to understand each child's unique trauma history. Core beliefs. By understanding each child's complex trauma history, we have a better understanding of how trauma has impacted their core beliefs. Trauma-impacted behaviors. Understanding a child's core beliefs enables a caregiver to see and understand complex and challenging behavior through a trauma-informed lens. They see the behavior as trauma-impacted behaviors. Trauma-informed caregiving. Caregivers need to tailor caregiving to meet the child's unique caregiving needs. Trauma-informed caregiving is an ongoing, adaptive, responsive, and reflective process. Module 8. Trauma and Behavior. When a caregiver comprehends that a child's perceived oppositional and defiant behaviors stem from complex trauma experiences and are the ways the child has learned to protect themselves, they are better able to provide and support the child's caregiver in providing repeated positive and safe responses. These responses assist the development of the child's healthy neural connections and positive, consistent coping responses. How will this information impact your decisions in your role? Children who, for any reason, have not had the opportunity to develop trusting, secure relationships in early life may manifest the effects of that lost opportunity in their behavior. Thus, a child who has been abused may be extremely wary of entering into any kind of emotional relationship with an adult, because they have found this to be an unsafe experience in the past. Module 8. Typical Behavior and Concerns. Although there are other behaviors that may worry caregivers, these are the most often mentioned. Stealing, particularly food or objects that can be traded for food. Hoarding, particularly of worthless objects such as parts of games, broken pens, etc. Unacceptable table manners, stuffing food in mouth, hiding food in room, lying, often without seeming cause, need for excessive amounts of physical contact, example clinging, wandering around the house particularly at night, excessive demands, tantrums, retaliatory behavior, hitting other children, inability to enjoy contact with other children, rocking, unexplained anxiety, hyperactivity, refusal to cry, unacceptable behavior away from home, example at the supermarket or in restaurants, bedwetting. It is most important to note that all children display such behavior at some time. We must be very careful not to attribute everything a child does to the effects of underlying trauma. Module 8. The Invisible Suitcase. The Invisible Suitcase. Trauma shapes children's beliefs and expectations about themselves, the adults who care for them, the world in general. These beliefs and expectations are like an invisible suitcase that children carry with them from placement to placement, from school to school, and from childhood into adulthood. But understanding the contents of a child's invisible suitcase is critical to understanding your child and helping him or her to overcome the effects of trauma. Let's consider Sarah's invisible suitcase. Module 8. Sarah's Suitcase. The Invisible Suitcase. Sarah's history. Sarah is 8 months old. You may think Sarah is too young to have anything in her suitcase. However, Sarah's brain has already begun to connect certain experiences and sensations with others. In the course of her short life, Sarah has experienced exposure to domestic violence, physical abuse, unresponsive caregiving, separation from her mother, medical trauma including time with her arms in casts. Sarah's behaviors. Sarah is now living with her aunt, and she cries and screams but seems to reject all attempts to physically comfort her, is easily startled and upset by loud noises, becomes particularly upset when brought to the doctor's office, calms down when she can hold her bottle propped up in the crib as opposed to being held in her aunt's arms, seems to take comfort from a particular piece of music. What's in Sarah's suitcase? Take 5 minutes, consider the following questions and fill Sarah's suitcase with what Sarah has learned. Given what we know, what do you think Sarah has learned? What are her beliefs about herself? What about her beliefs about her caregivers? What do you think she has learned about the world? Press the letter S to pause the slideshow, and press S again to continue. Module 8. Effects of Maltreatment. Altered brain development in children who have been maltreated may be the result of their brains adapting to their negative environment. If a child lives in a threatening, chaotic world, the child's brain may be hyper-alert for danger, because survival may depend on it. But if this environment persists, and the child's brain is focused on developing and strengthening its strategies for survival, other strategies may not develop as fully. The result may be a child who has difficulty functioning when presented with a world of kindness, nurturing, and stimulation. Child Welfare Information Gateway. Module 8. The Impact of Trauma. Congratulations, you've completed Module 8. Next, Module 9. Overview of Child Intervention.